So tonight I am talking about a weight you should never bear. A weight you should never bear. Now, typically I do a weekly podcast called In the Room Where It Happens. And this is one of my podcast episodes that I really wanted to do as a premiere video because there's just a lot to this that I really believe can and will be beneficial to you. So I'm going to ask you to do two things. One, I'm going to ask you to be open to being open. And two, I'm going to ask you to find a comfortable seat and put your seatbelt on, because this is going to be a bit of a bumpy ride. But I believe that if we are here for the right thing, we'll have a safe landing. Again, my name is Sandra Blythe. I'm glad to be with you this evening. I appreciate you taking out time to invest in me as I am taking time out to invest in you. This is a subject that has to do with not only healing, but it also has to do with setting boundaries. It has to do with accountability and responsibility. And oftentimes we can talk about the blame game. We can talk about blaming people for things that we were really the culprit of, or things that we really should have taken responsibility for. But this is not one of those episodes, or this is not one of those presentations that we're talking about blame game by no stretch of the imagination. This is not about a blame game. When I talk about weight you should never bear, this is truly about other people taking full responsibility and being accountable for that which they have done to create some type of variance or to create some type of issue within the relationship that they're having with you. This year, in most of the things that I'm talking about, I'm dealing with this idea of a place of healing. And within my podcast, we've spent a lot of time looking at the possibilities of the role we've played in our own emotional wounds, our own emotional injuries. And like I said, today, we're going to concentrate on something a bit different, because we're really going to be talking about a weight that the weight that you should never have to bear. So I want you to really think about this. I want you to really allow yourself to be open to some of the things that I'll be saying, so that by the end of this episode, you can begin some healing. You can begin to see some things in a different light, have a different vantage point of the things that have been transpiring between you and various people in your circle. So let's move on. So the $1 million question, why you bear the weight? Why do you bear the weight? So here's the idea of us bearing weight. Sometimes we will take on what someone has done to us. Now, I want you to hear me very clearly. Sometimes we'll take on what someone has done to us, and we'll spin a whole entirely different story. And it sounds a little bit like this. It wasn't you, it was me. It wasn't him, it was me. It wasn't her, it was me. It wasn't them, it was me. And that takes on a whole different caveat, a whole different caveat. And within that, we foster an emotional wound that doesn't even belong to us. So, but here's the question. Why do we do that? Why do we bear the weight for someone else's behavior? Now we're getting ready to drill down. We're going to get into some really sensitive things. One of the reasons why that can be done is because we want to preserve an image of that person. See, sometimes we have built an image about who a person is, especially people in our inner circle. So if it's my mom, if it's my dad, yeah, I said it. If it's my children, if it's my best friend, if it's my spouse, if it's somebody I'm dating, I want to preserve the image. So I can't let you bear that weight. I can't let you take that hit, because in my mind, I've written this narrative about your image. I've written this narrative about who you are. And if we tell ourselves something long enough, we will begin to believe it. We will begin to believe it. So we're preserving this image of what my daughter wouldn't do. It was on me, because had I not done and not said, she would not have responded or done as she did. So that's on me. Is it really? Because of this image I have built of my mom, what she said, what she did wasn't on her, it was on me, because had I not done or said, then that is it really the truth? If my spouse, you get the picture, I could go on and on and on. And I know this may feel uncomfortable, because we're talking about some people who hold critical places in our lives, right? Our parents, our children. So we're really not bearing the weight. It really is us. It really is something we've done wrong. And we feel what we feel because of what we've done, not because of what they're done. It's because of what we've done. Have we really? Did we really? Or are we preserving this image based on a narrative that we have written about our parents, about our children, about our spouses, about our best friends? It's a narrative we wrote, but it doesn't even exist. So why do I bear the weight? I want to preserve this image that I've written about Johnny. I want to preserve this image that I've written about Sherry. I want to preserve this image I've written about my inner group, because they're not these kind of people who would create this kind of emotional hurt or this kind of emotional wound within me. They wouldn't do that. So it must have been something that I did, something that I said, that created this. Hold tight. I know it's getting a little bumpy, but hold tight. Why do we bear the weight? We want to avoid change. See, if I don't bear your weight, if I don't carry your emotional wound that you've created, and I really open up that door for you to be accountable and responsible, that could change the tone of our relationship. That could change the way that we interact. That could change. I don't like change. And not only do I not like change, I don't like change when it comes down to me and my child, me and my best friend, me and my spouse, me and whoever. I like to avoid change. So sometimes, I just go ahead, take the hit. And I feel like it's not them, it's me, it's not her, it's not me, it's not him. It's me. I got to get it together, because if I didn't say, if I didn't, then they wouldn't. And yes, I'm hurting. I've been emotionally wounded, but that's not on them. It's not on him. It's not on her. And I'm bearing this weight subconsciously because I don't want change. I need to preserve an image. I want to avoid changing the tone of the relationship. And I don't want to damage the relationship. So I don't want to change it. I don't want to damage it. Because in doing those things, it'll put a variance between me and my child, me and my spouse, me and parent, me and best friend. It's going to put a variance. I don't want to damage that. So I'm not going to call anybody to the table and say, hey, you hurt me. You need to take responsibility. You need to be accountable. I'm not going to do that, because then it's going to damage that relationship. And for some, this may sound foreign. And for others, it may be hitting the nail on the head. A weight you should never bear. These are some of the reasons why we do what we do. Not wanting to terminate the relationship, not wanting the relationship to come to an end. See, because if I call you out and ask you to be accountable for your behavior, for your conversation, then you may decide to end the friendship. You may decide to end the relationship. So it's still that underbelly of preservation. I want to preserve this. So it's not you, it's me. You know, I know this situation didn't work out right, and there's some hurt, and it's me. I got it. I'm taking it. It's me. A weight you should never bear. When I say never, never. Here's reality at its best. We are not being helpful. Listen to that word. We're not being helpful when we do not allow other people to take responsibility and accountability for their behavior. As much as you love your child, if you don't want to hold them accountable and responsible, that doesn't help them. As much as you love your spouse, as much as you love your best friend. And I know here's where we get real uncomfortable. Even when it's your parent, and we sit and we go, but that's our parent. And I get it. And I don't mean any disrespect when I talk about accountability and responsibility, because there's a way to talk to our parents that can be very respectful, but yet position and posture that conversation to say, hey, yeah, I can't be held responsible or accountable for this, because here's reality. And that may not be a situation that happens often, but I would venture to say it does happen. But the reality there again is we got to realize we're not helping anybody when we take on that kind of burden, when we take on that kind of weight, because we're trying to stay engaged and attached to a person. So we're going to take the weight. We're going to be the weight bearer. That's a bad situation. That's a bad situation. Let's talk some more about it. So this fostering, remember I said when we do this, we foster. We're fostering and we're owning an emotional wound. It's not ours. So another prime example is, like I said, when we look at our children and we say things like, it's not his fault. If I would have been more understanding, if I would have let her go to the party, if I wouldn't have been so strict. Wow. We can't do that. We have to be able to allow people to take responsibility and be accountable for their behavior. Now, I'm not saying this is absolute. I'm not saying that it is 100% relevant in every situation, because obviously and realistically, there are times when we have to hold ourselves accountable. There are times when we are the culprit. There are times when both parties have to assume a certain level of responsibility and accountability. Those situations and scenarios truly do exist. I take nothing from them. But in this particular presentation, those are not the scenarios I'm speaking of. I'm speaking of the true scenario here when the other person really is the culprit. The other person really is the person who should be assuming the responsibility and being accountable for the experience that you are having. That's real talk all day long. We have those scenarios. We have that moment where the person you're protecting, the person you're not trying to allow to take that weight, is the very person that needs to raise their hand and say, yeah, it was me. Think about this one moment. And I think quite a few of us have an awareness of this. There are times when we think about the abusive relationships that are talked about. And let me clarify this so that we don't get lost in this conversation of abusive relationships. Abusive relationships are not just women who are abused. There are men who are abused. And while the statistics may be greater for women, this happens in both genders. So I want to say that to be very fair. But the point that I was getting at beyond the abusive relationship, what we hear oftentimes from the person who has been abused is what? It's not his fault. It's not his fault. It's not her fault. It's not her fault. And again, we're back to had I just not done, had I just not said, had I not just fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. Had I not just done. And there is this yearning sometimes for the person who's been abused, whether the abuse is physical, whether it's a mental and emotional. It's this yearning, if I could just be what he wanted me to be, if I could just be what she wants me to be, if I could just be what they want me to be, then these situations wouldn't occur, because I would know how to be better. And I know that sounds rough. Within the blame, the shame, and the guilt, you foster an emotional wound that doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to you. It's a situation where we excuse the behavior because we really don't want that other party to bear the weight. We don't. So we spend a lifetime in some situations continually saying, it's me, it's not her, it's not him, it's not them, it's me. We spend a lifetime fostering and owning wounds, emotional wounds that never belonged to us. Never did. I hope I'm coming through where you really understand that there may be some moments, there may be some scenarios that have taken place in your life that never should have been yours. Some weights you never should have had on your shoulders. And I am so sorry if that has happened. I am so sorry if that has happened. But what I'm trying to do with you this evening is open up that conversation, open up that door, give you that segue, give you that aha moment that says, I can't keep doing this. Because from an emotional and mental standpoint, that's explosive. If we were to continue to do this, mask and mask and mask other people's bad behavior, other people's misbehavior, and continue to say, it's me, it's not them. mentally and emotionally, we don't have that kind of capacity. We may be wearing some capes, but there's a certain point in time where that type of functioning becomes almost explosive to the internal person. So we have to start looking for resolutions. But there's another piece I want to tie into this before we start talking about the resolve of this. See, one of the factors that live loudly within this context is low self-esteem. And I'm not saying it's the it and the all, but it is partially what lives in this whole bearing the weight for what other people have done to you. When people have low self-esteem, it can be a source of the emotional wound, which becomes compounded by taking on the weight of other people's bad behavior or their misbehavior. Low self-esteem is a part of the equation. This is a situation that can play out daily for a person. Unfortunately, we have people who are perceptive, very intuitive, and they prey on that type of person. And you say, well, but if that's my best friend, well, if that's the guy I'm dating, if that's the woman I'm dating, if that's, now I said sometimes, I didn't say that's relevant to your situation, but there are people that are intuitive and are perceptive enough to recognize your battle, your struggle with your self-esteem that gives them a platform that says, she always gonna take the weight for what I do. He's always gonna take the weight for what I do. And they figured it out based on where you are with your self-esteem. That's where they figured it out. And we know self-esteem is this impact of negative emotions. It's this impact of all this negativity. And that's where we start seeing the low self-esteem, because it's the way we see ourselves. And if our self-esteem is in a place that sees us as not good enough, that sees us not having value, that sees us less than other people, that sees us, then imagine how simple, how easy it is for me to be a very viable candidate who is that person that will always say, it wasn't you, it was me. And will require nothing of you in terms of being accountable and being responsible. So there's that false sense of accountability that I would take as a person who has low self-esteem. I take on false sense of accountability in a relationship, whatever kind of relationship that is. I have this false sense of accountability. So I begin to say, it was, she wouldn't have responded like that had I not said. He wouldn't have done that had it not been for what I did. This is deep water. And if you're not ready to tread in it, it can be very, very uncomfortable. But this is a very important message, a very important presentation, that even if we feel like this is not the space we live in, I'm going to share something with you at the end that'll help you understand why it would be even important for you. So as we're continuing to talk about the weight of your self-esteem, how that plays into this weight we should never bear. So it penetrates the emotional wound. That low self-esteem penetrates the emotional wound. It's like, you're not good enough. You know you're not better than. You know you're not smart as. You know you're the one who created this. You know it couldn't have been him. You know it couldn't have been her. That's all that negativity. That's all that low self-esteem just coming out like a ball of fire. And as I said, agonizing with a desire to do or be better. That low self-esteem will take you there. Oh, that wouldn't have happened to Johnny if I would just be better. That wouldn't have happened to me had I just been better for Johnny. That wouldn't have happened had I just been better for Sarah. That wouldn't have happened had I been better for them. Man, we are carrying some baggage that is absolutely not ours. It isn't. And I totally understand low self-esteem. I get it. I totally get it. But there comes a point in time where we have to release some things so that we can heal, so that we can get better, so that we can see ourselves from a better, stronger, clearer vantage point. And we begin to move situations and poor relations out of the way. So let's just spend a few minutes talking about some of that. So now we said, you know what? We've looked at the foundation of this. We've looked at some potential obstacles, some potential things that keep us in that headspace of a weight we should never bear, things that keep us there where we don't understand that's not our weight. So we've talked through some of that. We've walked through some of that. Now, some of us may have had a moment where like, you know what? I just never even thought of why I was doing it. Because I think when we're experiencing something, especially something that creates pain for us, we need to get to the source of the pain. We need to understand not just what we're feeling, but why we're feeling it. Where is this stuff coming from? Because I will never be able to heal if I don't understand where my pain is coming from, if I don't understand who's causing the pain, what's causing the pain. And as I said earlier, sometimes it's not just the other person, sometimes it's both parties, but we're not talking about that tonight. We're talking about when it is the other person, when it's not about the blame game, it's real, true, straight up, real talk. Somebody else has brought the pain to your house, to your emotional house. They have brought the pain, and we got to do something about that because we can't live in pain for the sake of preserving a relationship, for the sake of preserving an image of what we've made up about who Johnny is, who Sarah is, who they are. Because there's just some real talk that says sometimes the very people we're trying to preserve an image of are the very people that will continue to keep us emotionally wounded. And we don't want that. We shouldn't want that. So let's talk about a little bit of resolution. How can we begin to start this resolution piece? How can we begin to start to take the time and peel back the layers? What can we do? What I just said, what's the driving force behind not really the behavior? What's the driving force behind your behavior? So then we can roll back, we can walk back to when we were talking about why you bear the weight, because then that becomes a bit of the underbelly that says, this is the driving force behind this behavior that I have. This is the driving force behind why I'm bearing the weight. It's the preservation of a false image that I've created. You know, that story I wrote about how together Johnny is? Yes, it's a story I wrote. It's a narrative I wrote about how together Sarah is. Yeah, that's a story I wrote, that she's just all of that. She's so smart, she's intelligent, she's beautiful, she's got it all together. It's more of a story I wrote than it is a reality of what she lives. You know, that narrative I wrote about those people, that group that I hang with, you know, how they're just, you know, really supportive and they're this and they're that and they're blah, blah, blah. It was really just a story I wrote. Let me pause there because I need to say something so that we can get real clear. It is very difficult to come to terms with people being different than what you wrote up in your head. That story we keep talking about, that narrative we keep talking about. It's difficult to come to terms with the narrative that you wrote about a person's image is different, especially when it's negative. You had this very positive narrative you wrote about who they were, when in fact they're 180 different. But there's something very significant in what Maya Angelou said. When people show you who they are, believe them. And I really could just stop right there. But that's part of our struggle. When it's someone that we care about, when it's someone that we're close to, and they are being very transparent about who they are. But yet we keep writing that story and saying that, you know, that's not who Johnny is. And when somebody else says something about him, oh, that's not who Sarah is. When people show you who they are, believe them. Unfortunately, what happens when people show us who they are, we try to change them. Or we bury our heads in the sand and we go into denial mode. And we can't do that. So as we're peeling back these layers, we have to take hold to that reality of how people are truly and honestly presenting themselves. And we have to kill and bury the narrative that we have written about who they are. Otherwise, we're going to continue to suffer these emotional wounds because we're going to keep them in our circle. They're going to continue to be who they are. And we're just going to have this vicious cycle of emotional hurt. So as we peel back the layers, we have to have courage and strength. We have to have courage and strength to acknowledge who they are. You know what? It's time for me to quit masquerading. It's time for me to quit saying, it's me. It's time for me to quit saying, it's not you, it's me. It's time for me to stop and have the courage and strength to acknowledge that it's time to come to the table and do what needs to be done. So as we talk about resolution, here it comes. And the biggest part of that is actually this, courage and strength. Because now I have to denounce the wounds because the wounds don't belong to me. They never belonged to me, ever. But I was carrying them. I was hurt. I was injured. But I had myself believing that they were my wounds. They were my issues. They were my weight. When in reality, they were yours. And now that I'm ready to heal, now that I'm ready to get better, I have to denounce those wounds. I have to return the wounds to their rightful owner. Now, this is my excited part. I have to return the wounds to the rightful owner. Guess what? That may mean our relationship will change. And I'm cool with that because I've gotten my courage and my strength up. So even if our relationship changes, I am okay with that. I'm okay. Maybe the relationship will not only change, maybe the relationship will end. Because now that I am holding you accountable and not allowing you to create this negative experience between us, and then I take the ownership of it, that may not work for you. That may make you uncomfortable. That may make you feel some kind of way. You might be in your feelings now. But because I have my courage and my strength now, I'm okay with the relationship taking a turn to the point where it terminates. Why? Because I got my courage and my strength now. So see, this thing starts to look different to me when I take that mask off, when I say, you know what, I am so much better than this. Why am I carrying this person's responsibilities and accountabilities? Why am I wearing Johnny's wound? Why am I wearing Sarah's wound? Why am I wearing their wound? Why am I fostering bad behavior? Because here's what I want to say to you, and I want you to hear this very clearly, as funny as it may sound. As I said earlier on, we are not built like that. None of us are built to carry that type of repeated offense, that type of repeated emotional injury again and again and again and again. Because if we continue in that mode, if we continue in that headspace, what I can guarantee you this, if you continue to do that, you will be on a psych ward. And I will be coming, or somebody will be coming there to brush your hair because you have lost your mind. You have become so mentally and emotionally broken that you're now on a psych ward. And I say that with all the love I have. I believe it. I've observed it. And it's real, because we are not built like that. I can't take on everybody's issues. I can't make everything my fault. That's a weight I should never have to bear, nor should you. I don't have enough brushes to run around to all of you and brush your hair while you're on the psych ward because you did not put a stop to this. So just with that alone, we got to break this cycle, right? We have to stop this. We have to stop saying it's not you, it's me. In these scenarios, in this scenario, when we know it is not us, we have got to let it go, relinquish it, return the wound to the rightful owner. I hope this has given you some insight. I hope this has helped you. I hope that you understand when I say a weight you should never bear. I hope this gives you some sense of clarity of how we can take on other people's stuff. And we're trying to protect them from something that they don't even need protecting from. Because here's the thing that I want us to also take away. When we stop bearing the weight of others, it positions that person to grow. It may be uncomfortable, but once they learn and accept and embrace accountability and responsibility for what they do within the framework of a relationship, they will grow in that relationship. They will grow on a personal level. They will be stretched. When you, as the weight bearer, discontinue bearing weights that are not yours, you will be stretched. You will grow. You will find your true place. So it's a twofold, because both people will begin to grow. So as I said earlier, you may not be the weight bearer, but unfortunately, you may be the one putting the weights on other people to bear. And I say that with all the respect and love I have, because if you are the person putting the weights on folks, you're going to have to man up. You're going to have to woman up. And this is your time to understand the value of being a person of genuine generosity. that says, you know what? I don't want people to bear my weights. I don't want people to be held accountable for my behavior. I don't want people to be responsible for the emotional wounds that I inflict on them. So starting today, I'm going to be a better man. Starting today, I'm going to be a better woman. It's okay to support people when they're going through something, but for you to take it away from them and say it's me, that's not going to help anybody. A weight you should never bear. I hope that you have enjoyed this as much as I have. There was a lot of meat on this, and I know we're going to have some future premiere videos that we'll get to explore together. But as for this evening, as you can see on this last slide, for my queens, coming on April the 3rd, I think 2 weeks from now, about 2 weeks from now, we're going to be doing a Queens in the Quicksand Series 2, a transparent healing for hidden hurt. Like I said, this is my year to talk about a place of healing. So everything that I'm doing is under that umbrella of emotional wounds, how we can heal, things that we can do better so that we can support one another. So ladies, get out there on eventbrite.com and register today so that you can be a part of that. That's going to be coming through on Facebook Live. And until next time, thank you again for watching this video.